Good morning, everyone. My name is Lindsay Bostwick, and I'm the Director of Artistic Planning here at the Art Center at NYU Abu Dhabi. And we are so thrilled to welcome you to our second career conversation, which is part of our program, our youth engagement program, which is sponsored by the U.S. mission to the UAE. So part of this program is providing conversations and space with our Art Center team to hear a bit more about their careers and to open up questions and conversations with students across the UAE and internationally. We are thrilled to have two incredible members of our team here, Simon Fraulo, our head of lighting, as well as Jen Hind, who is also part of our lighting team and has incredible work as a stage manager as well. And we are thrilled to have our NYUAD student and producing intern, Michael Leo, who will be moderating this conversation. We do want to welcome everyone to put your questions in the chat. We'll have space for that towards the end. And without further ado, I will hand it over.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. So yes, my name is Michael. I am a student at NYUAD studying interactive media, but I'm also an assistant at the producing department for the NYUAD Art Center. So without further ado, before I get into my questions, Simon, Jen, would you guys like to take this opportunity to briefly introduce yourselves and talk about how you got to this point in your performing arts careers at NYUAD?
Okay, I'll try and keep this brief. I first walked into a theatre in 1977, so a long time ago. And then I came back more regularly from 79 and have been working in performing arts ever since. When I started, there were no technical courses, so we learnt on the job. And I started in a provincial theatre in the UK, receiving shows and then going out on tours with various bands or dance companies or small opera companies, theatre companies such as Oxford Stage Company as they used to be, or Oxford Playhouse, sorry, as they used to be. Then I went to a producing theatre where we did our own productions in Coventry, the Belgrade Coventry. Again, between productions, I'd be touring and then transfer productions from Belgrade to Birmingham or to London. And after that, I went to the National Theatre on the South Bank in London, where I was for 27 years, relighting shows, touring shows all over the world, and producing some of the greatest theatre in the world, to be honest. And then I came to NYU Abu Dhabi because the challenge of setting up an arts centre here was something that intrigued me and I didn't want to miss out on. So that's my career path very, very briefly.
Thank you, Simon. Jen?
Sure. So my career path is a little bit different. I started in the performing arts as during doing an after-school performing arts academy in Brisbane in Australia. And so I was more performing on stage and then had a chance during one holiday show to work backstage and found that was a lot more fun and a lot more exciting for me. So I then went and studied a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Technical Production at Queensland University of Technology. And once I graduated, I moved down to Sydney and started working for the Sydney Opera House and Opera Australia in their lighting departments. For Opera Australia, I also worked in stage management and properties, and I worked for them for about 7 years before moving to the Royal Opera House of Muscat in Oman, which was just kind of applying on a whim. And I moved across in October 2014. I was there for 2.5 years before moving over here to the Art Centre, and I've been here ever since, working for the lighting department.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jen. So before we dive into like more specific questions about what both of you do with performances at the Art Center, I think both of you briefly touched on this, but what made you decide to pursue a career in the arts? If there was like a specific moment that made you think, okay, this is what I want to do, yeah, we'd love to hear that.
Okay, I what made me decide I want to be in this industry was I loved teamwork when I was at school, and being part of the rugby team and any other team activities. I have to say, at school, I flunked school academically. I was completely hopeless, probably still am. And there was something about theatre that when I started working in it combined everything that I had learnt at school. So geography, history, English, obviously, written and literature, maths, the sciences, and above all, teamwork. So when I first started working in theatre, I was doing everything, from sweeping the stage to operating the lighting console, or even queuing the odd show, helping to construct sets, and it was such a diverse activity compared to anything that I had done, that it was like a kid in a sweet shop or in a giant toy shop to start off with, constructing things like, Meccano and Lego, and then tapping into a creative side, which I really enjoyed. So I didn't just start doing lighting. There was a certain amount of set design, scenic artistry, sound design, as well as lighting. But as my career progressed, it became more and more focused into one area. And there was a point when I could have gone sound or lighting, and I chose the lighting path. But all technical aspects of this industry and producing aspects of this industry interest me. I've probably gone too much. Over to you,
No,
Jen.
that was perfect. Thank you, Simon. Yeah, Jen.
For me, I think it was because growing up, I was a little bit of a weird kid and I didn't quite fit in with like the standard groups in high school until I started like doing this after school performing arts thing, and then went, oh, here are where all the other weird kids are. And so it was just in a similar way as Simon said, like it's the teamwork and then kind of finding my family. And then after a few years going, like I finished high school, again, not knowing what I needed to do. I actually had to repeat my final year of high school and just not knowing what to do, started studying psychology and Japanese. And then I went, hang on, I can actually be paid to work backstage. And so I took a shot at studying, and that's what made me decide to do this job. Just kind of finding the people that I like to hang out with, and I can get paid and make a living doing it.
Yeah, that's definitely an important part of it. That's excellent advice too, actually. But now more into what both of you do at the art center. I know that both of you worked lighting design, but Jen's also done like stage manager work. I'm interested to know what the what the relationship between those two roles looks like before a performance, like in preparation for upcoming productions, during the production itself, and after. Like, so what does the relationship between those two roles look like?
So
I'll
I
let
think
Jen go first on that.
All right, awesome.
So I think for when you're talking about lighting design specifically, a lighting designer will generally start a lot earlier in the process than I would as a lighting technician. So generally you're there from before rehearsals start, same as stage management. So the stage manager's role is essentially, if there's no production manager attached to a show, then they're the ones who help kind of liaise between all of the departments. So they're there in the rehearsal room with the director, and they help send like all sorts of notes that come out of the rehearsal room to the creatives if they're not actually sitting there, which a lot of the time rehearsals can go on for quite a while. And I think it's I would say it's like two sides of the same coin, really. So obviously, like there are different aspects, like the stage manager is recording a lot more of like the stage directions that happen during the rehearsal process, and the lighting designer is more focused on like looking and thinking about how to create the looks of what the director wants from it.
Okay, so for me, as Jan says, the process would start earlier, and I'm just going to talk about lighting design now. So the process would start much earlier than it does for most of the technical team. The first people in the game would be the producer, deciding what show they want to put on. Then they commission, or they're working with the director and playwright get together. Then director and set designer get together. And from that, if you're already an established creative team, they'll have one of their go-to lighting designers. So then the lighting designer would come on board. So I would be handed a script, and I will read the script, and I tend to read the script once. I don't really like reading it more than once, because I don't want to have any preconceived ideas before I've had a creative meeting with the director and the designer. Because, you know, if for argument's sake one is doing Richard III, I don't want to have an idea of stylization or how at the stage, and I just don't want any preconceived ideas of it. If it's a new writing or an adaptation of an existing piece. So another example would be something like View from a Bridge, which I went to see in London a few years ago. And the first production I saw was very traditional. The second one was very untraditional, directed by a very well-known Dutch director who I can't remember. So I don't like to read a script too much, because I don't want those preconceived ideas. So then I'll have a creative meeting, a meeting with the rest of the creatives about the direction the production is going to go in, how it's going to be styled, the kind of looks that they're after. Then I'll go and revisit the script. And then from the meetings I've had with the rest of the creative team, particularly when the designer is talking about how they want the staging to be, and the director is talking about, well, they're both talking about the staging and the styling. I will then pull out bullet points from the script. So let's say it's Richard III, for argument's sake. So I will then write down one words as these bullet points. So it'll be like throne, crown, murder, princes, travel, sunlit uplands, whatever the words are, and I'd write them down. And this was a trick I learned from a set designer called Alison Chitty. And you write these bullet points down almost as if it's a poem. So you start to read it through, and these are points that you, during the course of the design, you're pulling these points out. Bullet points to highlight on. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but it's a good reference point. I, as Lindsay and Jen will probably testify, err more on the dark side of lighting. I like very contrasted lighting. So I will draw on a library of images, and for things like, in this day and age, it's fantastic, but because of the internet, but in the 80s and early 90s, when we didn't have internet, I would have loads of reference books, books of various photographers, particularly black and white, because those are very striking images. And nature would be color photographs of landscapes, skylines, seas, and you'd pick out all the colors. Sometimes they look very chocolate boxy, and don't look real when you create it on stage, but in fact, when you hold up an image, or you go outside of the theatre and look at the sky at night, and then come back in, you go, well, they are very real, and those colours do exist. It's just that most people aren't tuned into it. So that's where I start. Sorry, I've waffled.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I just wanted to point out that the background behind you, that's your lighting design, isn't it?
Yeah, to be honest, this is not really a design.
Right.
It's the rig is designed. and it's a rig that's designed for any eventuality that might come in, particularly more on the music and dance side of the industry. It's not a fantastic theatrical rig because all the fixtures or the lights behind me are arc sources. So they have fans in, so they tend to be quite noisy when they're all on because the fans are keeping them cool. So if you're doing a very quiet Shakespeare sonnet, it's probably not the best lighting rig, but we would put up a more conventional lighting rig for a theatrical performance. So what you're seeing behind me is what we call busking. So the band was Soul 47. They came in on one of the Barzac festivals. We don't know the band very well at the time they come in. You know, we can listen to some of their stuff on YouTube and see some videos and stuff, but we don't know the set list. We don't really know what's going on. So you kind of have to focus on the stage and what they're doing, and then we call it busking because we are literally busking the show with lighting. And sometimes it works well, that one. Sometimes it doesn't work so well, and you kind of miss that big blackout moment, or you don't quite get the beat right, and you have to mess around for a little bit, and it's till you get the everything in sync. But that's for me, just as a side note, when I started and I was lighting bands and touring with bands in the early 80s, we ended up not having this kind of technology. So it was just pointy lights, pointing them at the stage, park hands, and follow spots were the only things that moved, with human beings making them move. Now it's all automated, and I have to say I've had so much fun over the last 6 years lighting bands again. It's been good fun. So
awesome. Yeah. So with all the new technology that's come up, I'm curious. Like, there are a lot of terms that I honestly did not I did not understand. But through my work with the Arts Center, there are some words for the lights that you're using that I do understand. This is an open question to Jen and Simon. Like, if someone is trying to get more experience in these sort of fields, like they're aiming to work in lighting, like design or technician, if they're aiming to gain experience as a stage manager, is it a good start, like especially for the kind of high school students that um, that we're talking about, or like even college students, is it a good start to get involved with, like, what I would go as far as to call low budget productions that don't necessarily have this kind of tech? So Jen?
Yeah, I would definitely say yes. I mean, I started in a small, like, performing arts space. I worked for quite a few years in an amateur theatre space in Brisbane, where it was all so basic. And so definitely, like, it's all just, like, there's nothing that can beat practical hands-on experience, even if you're, like, working with basic equipment. Like, I'm sure Simon will explain that, like, you can have all the fancy equipment like we have at the Arts Centre, but it all comes down to like a handful of basic principles, especially for lighting. The stage management as well, it's all stage management, obviously, like there's a lot more, you're interacting with a lot more people. So definitely getting any sort of experience that you can helps with, like, building up interpersonal skills is what I'm trying to say, I'm trying to remember. So whether that's through like a little high school drama club, if there's not one, then like, why not set one up yourself? Or like ADCG, the community groups, short and sweet, when that happens. Yeah.
Sounds great. Simon, like, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, it's the great thing about working in a small venue is limited equipment. So you actually really have to think really hard about what it is you need to do versus what it is you really like to do. So priority, you need to like the actors, and you need to try and tell the story So if you, as it's being presented on stage, so if you turn up in a small studio theatre with 24 dimmers and 24, well, 36 fixtures, because you can pair some of them up, you're very limited on what you can do. And if they're not intelligent fixtures, which means I can't program them to be in different locations, different colors with different, what we call gobos or templates in, then you're using a fixed focus. So you physically go up and point the light, and you're using a gel to change the color temperature. Now, there are thousands of colors in the color spectrum, thousands and thousands, but primarily in lighting, you deal with two shades, warm and cold. But there are many shades of those colds and many shades of those warm. Blue tends to be cold, although there are some blues that are very, very warm. And what you need to do is understand how filters work, so that a blue at low level, a heavy blue at low level, actually is a very warm color. But at a brighter level, intensity, mixed with another color, can become very cold. So you're, instead of on this occasion, instead of a light doing many jobs, this one light is doing one job, but the filter is having to do many jobs in conjunction with other lights. With the modern technology, you're thinking in a very different way. And it's, a lot of lighting designers can get very lazy with modern technology. They'll just go, I'll put a load of moving lights on in the rig and forget about it, because I'll just worry about it when I'm there. You still have to think about the focus. You still have to think about how you're going to get your fixtures to get from one look to another look without them happening live, because there's nothing more ugly than seeing a moving light on shooting across the stage very quickly, the shutters going and colors changing and so on. One of the things I do like to do, we had a really lovely student, Leslie, a couple of years ago, who came to me to light something in the NYU small studio black box, baby black box, mini black box studio. He wanted to borrow a load of lights, and I said, you can borrow some fixtures, but I'm actually only going to give you some lusters, which are LED units. They're generic units, so that you can't program them to do anything except change color. And I could see the look of disappointment on his face, and I said, look, Leslie, I'm giving you these lights because you've got to think about how you use them. You do have the ability to be able to have whatever color you like in them. I'm not going to be so cruel as to take that option away, and you have to think about your colors, because I was trying to give him more of an insight into the kind of stuff that he would have to be dealing with when he gets into the real world. So there is a huge advantage, going back to the original question, of starting in a small venue with limited equipment, because you really start to learn your craft, and you have to be inventive. So use the set. One of the great things is to use the set as the gobo. So if you have a window with a Venetian blind in it, then stick the light behind the window through the Venetian blind. You don't need to put the gobo of a Venetian blind inside the light. So in the next scene, when the window is being struck by stage crew, the light can be used for something else. So it's those little things
that you learn when
yeah.
Oh, okay, that's very useful to know. It's very heartening for people who may not necessarily have access to the kind of equipment that's available at big time venues. I'm curious, like, what would you consider to be the most rewarding part of your jobs?
Wow. I'm going to let you go on this first, Jen, because I've got to think about this, because there are so many. But actually, yeah.
I think I'm
Sorry
just going
for throwing you under the bus.
No, that's all right. I'm just going to go with a really simple answer and just go, it's so satisfying when you've been working for like several days or several hours or several weeks on one project, and then it actually happens. So
Yeah.
once all of the threads have been tied together and the show happens, and then you actually get to see you get to see an audience appreciate everything that you've done, even though it could be like 10 p.m. and you've still got like another 1 or 2 hours worth of programming, lighting desk programming to go after having been there since 9 in the morning.
Yeah. I don't know why, but it made me think of, the A team. Like, I love it when a plan comes together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
there is very much an element of that, actually, because for me, one of the most satisfying things is when you see all of those discussions and ideas start to come to fruition. And it is, the plan is coming together. But there are times also when, my part of the process is to light actors. Now, when you do a focus, often you're the lighting designer standing on stage, directing, pointed over here, bringing a shutter, softer focus, drop the filter in, old school, or you're at the console with the programmer and you're telling them where you want the moving light, but there isn't anybody on stage. So you can often walk away from a focus session or indeed a lighting session. And I don't really like having to do lighting sessions because I sort of feel like I'm lighting nothing because there's no one there and it's not in context of the piece. So it's good to have a foundation perhaps in the console, so you've got something on stage, but I prefer to do it as we go. And you can often go home feeling quite depressed that it's not working, or you don't really know what's happening, and it's not until the technical starts you can start to go, oh, it's okay, it's working, trust in the force. And then seeing that come together during the tech when you're making effects in the show work, and combining all these elements and working in a collaborative process, that is so satisfying. And then the final fade to black, that moment of pause, and then the audience's reaction. And that is, or it could be not the final fade to black, it could be snap blackout at the end of Act 1, for instance, on Anything Goes, at the end of the big dance number, Anything Goes. There was a huge tap routine, it was really lively, and then bang, it snapped out and the entire audience cheered and stood on their feet and were clapping, and it was like, hang on, we've just got to the interval, we've still got another half of this show to get, and you just know that it's working. So I think knowing that it's working and seeing the reaction is possibly the most satisfying experience.
Very cool. I'm sure a lot of people hearing this will be very excited to experience that for the first time. So Jen, Simon briefly touched on this, like basically to the contrary of what I was asking, like something that's difficult to experience, something that's sort of challenging to deal with in the process. So yeah, Jen.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to have to think about this. I think there was one show that I worked on, which was an outside opera in Sydney. And the challenging process in that, I was an assistant stage manager, so at least I was far enough down the pecking order, but we had a visiting design and directing team from Spain working on it, and I think he was local Australian/German lighting designer, and they did not get on at all. It was an awful thing to experience. They just essentially refused to work together. And then it got to the point where the technical director of the company had to step in. I think we were like 2 or 3 days out from like having a preview audience. And he had to step in and essentially kind of take over the lighting design because the lighting designer was refusing to work with the director. Yep. So that was really challenging to experience, even though I wasn't directly experiencing it myself. That kind of conflict, like it filters down throughout.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's really hard to deal with, especially when it's out of your hands.
Yeah.
That's a very good point, Jen. I remember occasionally when some creative teams just clashed, and it's very awkward, and it does filter down to everybody else. And also, if a director loses the trust of an actor on stage and the actor then starts to bite back, it suddenly just makes everybody within the whole project feel uncertain, very nervy. And I think anybody who has aspirations to be a creative in this industry has to have extraordinary people skills to be able to keep everybody together. And even when you feel like you're losing trust from people, to be able to, or you're losing confidence within other elements of the creative team, or any point in the process, you need to hide that so that you can address that very privately. Because as soon as that becomes public, you start to lose everybody, and you effectively can lose days of work because everybody's now walking around on eggshells, and you just totally jeopardize the project.
Yeah, that's a very important point. How it, so what you say, sort of trickles down to the entire production. On a lighter note, like, do either of you have? I'm sure there are many memorable performances, but if you had to pick one, but hopefully for like a positive reason, that it was memorable for a good reason, what would you say was the most memorable performance of your career that you can remember, that you pick one off now?
You want to go first, Simon, or do you
Oh
need a bit of
my
time?
good God. Oh, well, one of my favorite productions I worked on was a production called The Mystery Plays, which was styled in working man's old Northern England. And I've gone completely blank on the play right now. Oh, that's terrible. Anyway, so we had loads of oil lights with flicker candle bulbs in, dustbins with holes drilled in with flicker light candle bulbs in. So it was a very heavy orange look to the show with lots of smoke. The first play was, I can't remember the name of the first play now, it's terrible. Anyway, the second one was a nativity, and the third one was called the Passion Play. So it's about the Old Testament of the Bible. And it was there was a lot of folk song in it, there was a lot of music, there was great acting, there was great humor in it. The way it was styled was amazing. I really enjoyed working on that show. In fact, I've got two quite beautiful photographs of the production hanging on the wall here. And one of my, which will never leave me as a moment, there was a lovely actor called Michael Bryant who was dying, and he was playing Fears in the Caucasian Chalk Circle. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the story, but when all the family leave the home, he's left behind, and he's the old butler servant, manservant, and he's left behind inadvertently, and he lies down in the empty house and dies. And this was Michael's last stage performance as he was retiring, in fact, going into hospice to die. So it was an extraordinary emotional moment for everybody within the production. And a lot of the audience knew that that was the situation. So I just slowed the blackout down by a couple of seconds. And it was just that last fade out, as the blackout normally would just go ooh out. I brought it down, and then just almost the last spot on him just delayed that little bit longer, and then just faded out. Not a dry eye in the house. But there are just so many. I mean, you know,
Yeah, I can imagine.
Impossible.
Yeah. No, but those are incredible. Jen, do you have any? Oh, but before that, I just wanted to remind everyone that we do have questions from the audience that I will be asking after this. But if anyone has any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat right now. All right, thank you. Yeah, Jen. So sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, that's quite all right. So mine is a little bit more lighthearted and also a good example of like how to make the best out of a bad situation. So when I was still working for Opera Australia, and I was working as an assistant stage manager on a production of South Pacific that we were doing from the Lincoln Centre. And so this was the second season that it was playing at the Sydney Opera House. Now, this was before the Sydney Opera House's major renovations, which happened a couple of years ago. So the, what's now called the Joan Sutherland Theatre, the Opera Theatre, is very small. So you've got the stage space, and then you've essentially got a metre either side of wing space. It's very, very small, and how they managed to fit in some of the grand operas is an engineering feat. They also have a rear stage, which has a rear lift, which goes down to the dock area, which is where we keep all of the other sets. And because there's such a small space, we had to keep all of the sets for Act 2 for South Pacific down underneath the stage. So for anyone who doesn't know South Pacific, the stage musical, the second act essentially opens with this big variety show. And so it's the set-wise, it was very different from Act 1. So during this one show, during the interval change, we got rid of all of the Act 1 sets that we didn't need, put it on the lift went down to the dock, and then it got stuck. And then it went up a little bit with the Act 2 set, and then it just stopped moving. So the interval was about 20 minutes long. So we spent 20 minutes trying to get the lift moving, and it just didn't. So by this stage, we had to make the decision to start the second act without the set. So a lot of the cast members who were in this season of South Pacific were in the previous season. So they had already done like 6 months worth of shows. And I think we were about 3 weeks into this season. And so this was like an old hat to them, like doing the show. But having to do the show without the set and kind of just spontaneously restage it, there was so much energy in that second act that, like, obviously that was, I want to say, like 2013. And like that image and that feeling has just stayed with me ever since. So I think that's my favorite thing.
That's incredible. Yeah, those incredible stories all around. So we have some great audience questions, but I want to stay on time. So there's one really interesting one that we've got from Bea, which is, what is one piece of advice you would give to students who are thinking about a career in this kind of production? Yeah, I know it's an intense question, but I think this is a really good sort of starting point. So one piece of advice, it can be as like simple or something that people wouldn't normally think of for students who are thinking about a career. Yeah.
Regardless of what aspect of the industry you want to work in, is to be open-minded and not to. It really is about being open-minded and listening to other people's ideas, because someone else's idea might give you an impetus to change yours a bit, and it boils down to being collaborative. There is not one single person that carries a production through and rubber stamps their hallmark on it. It's completely a collaborative process. So if you're not able to work collaboratively on creating performance art, then find another career. But be open-minded.
Fair enough. Yeah. Jen?
I would say, like, the first thing is to just find a group or put something on together. Just try and get your hands dirty to see if you actually really want to do it. And then if you do really enjoy it and enjoy those long hours and aren't afraid of like trying to make things work on an absolute shoestring budget, then definitely explore it further. I think my high school counselor told me that he gave a weird example about how there weren't many people employed by a symphony, so I shouldn't get into theatre. I've been steadily employed ever since I graduated university in 2006. I mean, this pandemic has put a bit of a different spin on things, but definitely just try it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So awesome advice. So harking back to I'm gonna address the other audience questions quickly, hopefully. So Simon, when you were talking about bullet point poetry in how you like basically work with the creative directors for the lighting and like it's specific words that are said, we have a question from Stephen and Giles. Can you talk more about how your bullet point poetry leads to design? How do you collaborate with the director?
Okay, yeah. So, all right, let's let's stick with. Uh, so I've like, as I said at the beginning, I read the script once. So if it's new writing, obviously you've never read it before. If it's a production you've already worked on, for instance, Richard III, umpteen times, or doesn't matter, View from a Bridge, or All My Sons, you. And it can be because there are many adaptations of Richard III. Many people have taken Shakespeare's script and adapted it, and then gone, we don't want that scene, we don't want that, whatever. So you go, you kind of scan through it again, so you don't have any preconceived ideas. And actually, when you're redoing a production you visited several times before, it's really quite hard to keep your head clear from that. So you then have that meeting with the director and the designer, and they will tell you how they want it to be staged, what it is they're trying to put across the audience, whether they're going to have it styled in some sort of Jackson Pollock painting look, or whether it's going to be Baroque or just conventional. And then I'll read the script again, and then I will, as I said before, pull out these points like the mention of the throne, the mention of the crown, the mention of sunlit uplands, rain. I did a production a long time ago of The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, and there was in the artist studio, one of the students has a liaison with their art tutor. It's raining outside, but it's a very beautiful moment. So they've just made love, and we've had the effect and feel of rain, but while it is still raining, the sun comes out. And the director turned around to me and said, I don't really understand why we got sun. And I said, because it's still raining and you still get beautiful shafts of sunlight come in through or in the atmosphere, in the world, while it is still raining. And there is nothing more romantic and beautiful from my point of view, from the quality of light that can give. And they conceded and went, oh, yeah, I'd never really thought of it like that. And that's something else that's great about doing what it is that we do, is because you're taking somebody else's idea or thought or image and you're changing their viewpoint. So when I write all of this stuff down, there'll be constant themes going through it. And for something like Richard III, it is the constant theme that goes through that play is murder. I mean, it's a very violent play. And the stylization, or the way it's styled, often is, this guy clanking around in a suit of armor and stabbing everybody and everybody being murdered. But if you turn it around from a political point of view, and the production that I worked on some years ago now was styled in the 30s, because Richard III's rise to power was very similar to Germany in the 30s, and then his subsequent downfall. So the way it was styled, and then we toured it all over the world and went to, sorry, I'm going off the main point of the question. but that was a very different way of doing a production. So once I've written all of this stuff down, and I'll pick out the common themes, so murder, throne, crown, dark. It's dark. There's prison cells. There's secret meetings. There's betrayal. So it's, and how do you create those feelings, not through conventional front and back lighting. It's side light, it's sinister light, it's footlight, it's, create shadows. One light can say more than, in the way it's being used, than a whole lighting rig on at the same time. And it just helps create the scene. And if you're going to have the throne in the room all the time, then have it lit, because it's all about that.
Yeah.
And it's the overriding force within the whole play. It's what everybody, or is what the main character is striving for the whole time. So you can't lose it, use it. So that's another little soundbite there. Nonsense soundbite.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that was great. I'm just like it's very thought provoking to think about the little ways that even the smallest decision matters in lighting. Um, but we do have a question so I'm going to direct this one towards Jen, because I know that there's that you sort of had to balance your technical skills, administrative and management skills. Not that that's not involved for everyone in the production, but Jen, Bill asks, alongside the technical skills, can you talk about the administrative and management skills that are useful to develop when you're working on a production, like the ones that you guys have worked on, the ones that we've been talking about?
Well, once I remember the word, definitely interpersonal skills, and I know Simon mentioned this as well. That's so important, especially when you're working in the management and the stage management side of things. Administrative skills is also a tricky one. So because I focused on stage management as well as lighting design in my degree, I was able to get a bit more experience in the administrative side. So helping to plan rehearsal schedules, helping to facilitate communication between all of the departments. But one of the things that I've discovered is, especially in some of the work that I've been doing in the past year at the Arts Centre, is some of my experience hasn't been fulfilling for the business administration side. And I know that's the same for some other people in other companies that I've worked with, and especially with the way that kind of promotions happen in big companies like Opera Australia, and I'm sure Simon will say the same for the National or other large institutions, is that you'll generally, the people who will be promoted into those manager experiences, they'll start from a lighting technician or a lighting supervisor position. So then you kind of have to go outside to get that sort of that more business administration education that you wouldn't necessarily get through theatre.
Yeah, for sure. This has been a really interesting conversation for me. Very, like I said, very thought provoking. So I think we have time for one more question before I hand it back to Lindsay. And the question is from Lindsay, actually. So wondering if you can share how your work at the Arts Centre is distinct from other venues you've worked at. So how does it compare to the places that you guys have talked about that you worked at in the past? So yeah.
Okay.
This is to both of you. Yeah, Simon, go ahead for sure. Yeah.
It reminds me very much of my early days working in the performing arts. We are working on much tighter budgets, and our production our program, is far more varied than it would be working for a theatre or an opera company or a dance company. We're doing it all. I love the fact that I often have to think very much on my feet, and come up with a solution to a seemingly difficult problem. I love the fact that I'm working with some really interesting artists, such as Sema Dance Company, who are incredibly professional at what they do, and talented. It's very varied. And I think that to me is, and that takes me right back to my early days of working in this industry. And it's almost like coming full circle. And I've enjoyed working here, and it's very varied is all I can say, really. It's and when it works, oh my God, it works. It's something, it's really, there's nothing like it.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. Jen?
I think for me, because I spent a lot of time working for Opera Australia, so you're working with the one company. I agree with Simon, like the variety is good. Also, it's similar to working for the Sydney Opera House in the way that it is like a multi-venue venue. However, because it's attached to the university, we also get the opportunity to work with a wide variety of students. So we work with like the music department and the theatre department, the IM department. We work with students in other departments through like working on the attitude dance. And even though like I previously had this multi-venue experience, because of the location of Abu Dhabi, and we're right kind of in the center of like people who are traveling to Europe or traveling from Africa or traveling from Asia, I've been able to experience working with a broader variety of companies and bands and international acts than I would in Australia, because Australia is so far to get to. Like quite often we don't get like smaller African companies, because it would just like not be cost effective for them to travel to Australia. So it's definitely one of the things that I like about working here.
Yeah. So I know I said that would be the last question, but we do have a really good one from Stephen, which is, so at the school, at the high school, our lighting designer here at the school wanted to ask both
of you.
I was
just typing a reply to that.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah,
it's a very good question.
Yeah.
So I'll. The question is it good to learn multiple consoles or concentrate on one and then move on from that when it comes to understanding lighting design and programming? So the best thing to do is to focus on one console. The philosophy and the principles of programming a lighting console are pretty well the same throughout the industry. Just the consoles vary. It's like having a PC or a Mac or a Samsung tablet or whatever. They all do the same thing. It's just that the terminology and the menu structures are different. But what you're looking for, and what I'm looking for as a lighting designer and as a lighting programmer, but primarily as a lighting designer, is whoever is on that console can work very quickly, and they have their workspace set out that they can access what it is that they need to do, or what I want them to do, very quickly. And there are so many different ways of doing that. So you would learn from a person who's got a lot of experience, and then you would adapt that to suit your own needs, but or your own way of working, how you want to set out your workflow. So for instance, right next to me here at home, I have a lighting console, and that said console I've been working on during this pandemic to hone my own skills and to come up with new ways of working. And from that, I know that I can program quicker for a visiting lighting designer, but I now know that I can do stuff that I didn't know I could do before. So as a lighting designer, I can turn around and then help teach a programmer something new. Or so it's I would focus on one console, and then after that, a lighting console is a lighting console is a lighting console. It's just the buttons are in a different place, and the syntax for the command line can be different.
All right.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, it sounds really helpful. I don't know enough about lighting to guarantee that, but I'm sure it is. Jen, do you have anything to add to what Simon said?
No, I'm just going to second everything that Simon said.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think we have time for like one. So Bea sent another question that I really wanted to ask, and I'll try and keep this short before handing it back to Lindsay. But what is one thing you would have been grateful to know before you started your careers in this field? So something that you would have loved to know before you had started that you know now.
How to articulate earlier. Pointing question just there. Perhaps I've never learned it. I'll think about that. Jen, have you got one? Go.
What would I tell younger me? How
are we for language on this? Younger me, I would have told younger me not to be such.
Let's keep it clean. Let's keep it clean.
Let's not be such a loud. Yeah.
Loudmouth.
Keep my mouth shut when I was younger, because it's a small industry and it's very easy to upset people, and people have a long memory in this industry. And if you upset somebody at the start of your career, it could mean no career. So
yeah,
observe.
I kind of want to say maybe focus on one thing. Maybe that's what I tell my younger self. But then, I mean, yeah, there's definitely benefits to focusing on one thing and kind of progressing through like those stages of the career ladder. But then at the same time, like I enjoy variety, which is why like I enjoy working at venues with different things on. I enjoyed working for Opera Australia because it was a rep opera company. I'm gonna go with stick to your gut, because there have been times when I haven't listened to my gut and it didn't pan out.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. Like everything that you guys have been talking about today has been excellent advice that I'm sure a lot of people will appreciate. So with that, I thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I will hand it back to Lindsay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Hey everyone, I can't turn my video on, so it's just my voice here, the voice of God, which we love in the theater world, the narrator's voice. Just saying a huge thank you to everyone who is in the room. There we go. A huge thank you to Jen and Simon for sharing your story and so many questions, and a huge thank you to Michael for these incredible questions. Thank you to Raha International, where we have some students in the room, as well as all the students who are going to be watching this on demand. And would like to thank the U.S. Mission to the UAE for really supporting and inspiring this conversation series. We thank you all, and we really look forward to inviting you back next week for our next conversation series. Thank you so much, everyone, and look forward to seeing you next week.